very vital issue. Unless you've been living under a rock over the last, in particularly the last 2 years, 3 years, then I think we would all be in agreement to some degree, varying degrees, with the current state of our nation, that there's a lot of craziness going on. Next slide, please. The purpose of today's presentation, my presentation to you, is I'll probably reiterate this throughout the course of my time with you today, is that this is very basic. If I could go into detail as much as I would like to, we would probably be here all day. And if any of y'all are familiar with me, y'all know I can talk. So that would be like no issue whatsoever. But I want to equip you with some very basic knowledge to increase your situational awareness skills, something that I think is sorely lacking in our society these days. And another thing that will help you be better prepared for the issues of violence that we're seeing in our society. If you've been watching the news just this past weekend, response to Roe v. Wade being overturned, violence, I would say not just this past weekend, but over the past few weeks, in light of the idea that it was going to be overturned. There have been attacks on churches, over 100, maybe 150, I believe, attacks on pro-life organizations. Not to mention, we can go back into a little bit into our history, the violence from 2020 that wasn't really addressed in various areas. Over $2 billion worth of damage. 220 cities had riots. We're dealing with some ugliness right now, folks. And whatever I can do to help you be better prepared for that, that's what I hope to do today. And an additional factor that can help us is to better understand the mind and motivation of the violent offender. Next slide, please. And also give you some options for as far as self-defense goes. What are some things that you can do? And this area, and when I get to this, because there's a portion at the end where I'm giving you my personal opinions, and I'll discuss it a little more. Make sure that you're doing, when we start talking about the issues of self-defense, I understand that many of us here are believers. So I want to offer the consideration, just make sure you work within your conscience. Like some things, because there may be someone who is a Christian pacifist. I don't personally espouse to that, but I know that there are faithful believers who do. So some of the suggestions, just take it with a grain of salt. It's like the whole Bruce Lee thing. I mean, we're talking about self-defense. Bruce Lee would talk about, Bruce Lee would talk about take what is useful, discard what isn't. So it's kind of like that mindset as we my background. Okay, just to give you a brief breakdown, I was in the Army from 1988 to 1992 as a combat medic deployed to Operation Desert Storm. I got out at the end of 1992, I began working at Westfield Correctional Center. Westfield is a maximum security prison, right? It used to be. It was a maximum security prison when I worked there, but it's like real low level now, which is a good thing because it wasn't designed to deal with the level of offenders that they had. But it is about 40 miles outside Chicago, no, about an hour outside Chicago, about 40 miles outside of Gary, Indiana. And if you are even remotely familiar with those areas, you can only imagine the level of clientele that we had. It was horrendous. But I'm telling you, I learned so much about the criminal mind, about human nature, about situational awareness, and about body language, things that helped me throughout the rest of my career. So in 1995, I moved out here, and in 1996, I began working for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department as a corrections officer at the Clark County Detention Center. Was there for about 10 years, and in 2006, I just got tired of working in the jail, so I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I transferred out to the patrol side of the house and worked as a police officer from 2006 till 2014, where I ultimately retired. Throughout that time, I worked in court services, field transporting, where you transport inmates in and out of the facility. I was a gang intelligence officer, gang response officer. I was a defensive tactics instructor, firearms instructor. active shooter response instructor. I think that's it. I'm sure there are a few things I forgot. So just let you know that I kind of know what I'm talking about in this area, maybe a little. All right, we talked about purpose. And as believers, I think we all always need to bring everything back to the Word of God. And I think this verse will be something that we should hold on to as we proceed throughout the course of this presentation. The Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continued. Genesis 6:5. Now let's start getting into some examples of the things I'm talking
about. A frightening crime trend. Follow home robberies. ABC's Zareen Shaw's in Los Angeles with more. Zareen, good morning.
Good morning. When LAPD's chief says they are stepping up their efforts, usually this means the criminals will take a step back. But that is not happening yet, and it is a major cause for concern. This morning, the LAPD warning of what they call follow home robberies. This dramatic video
released was just a few months ago,
showing one woman racing away from robbery suspects after officials say one smashed her car window after she left a jewelry store. Seconds later, they mowed her down with their car. The suspects running off with a watch she then throws across the street. Officials say LA has been plagued with at least 55 follow-home robbery cases so far this year, set to break the 164 incidents reported last year.
Many times these offenders are scouting out locations, setting up the pantry. They even have relationships with parking valets or store employees. We're not clear on that.
And add smashing grab robberies to the type of crime police are still urgently responding to. On Friday night, police say two suspects used sledgehammers through the windows of a K Jewelers in a packed mall in Brea, taking off with handfuls of gold chains. LA overall seeing a year-to-date percent uptick in robberies of over 17%. But this type of crime in multiple major cities is soaring. New York reporting a 48% year-to-date increase in robberies, DC seeing a 59% increase, and Miami seeing an over 68% increase. For LA's part, their chief saying they dedicated a task force to focus on the problem, but they're also depending on people to be closely aware of their surroundings.
There's no item of property that's worth your life.
We'll get more into the details of best responses a little bit later. But I want to continue to make my case that things have gotten as far as the uptick in crime. There has been, that is definitely clear. I want to continue to make my case.
Murders were up in the biggest increase since the Bureau started keeping those records in 1960. Good morning, I'm from CBS's Jeff Davis.
It's been a year of brazen violence nationwide. 23 shot, including 3 killed outside a nightclub in Florida. A man opens fire at a convenience store in Washington. And in Philadelphia, a shooter in a car fires on a group. 6 were shot, 1 died.
Like everyone I know in Philadelphia, I'm outraged by this.
Over 400 people have been killed in Philadelphia this year alone. Murder rates soared in 2020, up 30%, the largest increase ever. Cities like Memphis, Milwaukee, and Des Moines have all set.
All right. I want to share a little bit of more information with you here as we proceed. You can just check what I have on the screen right here. Murder spike. FBI reports biggest U.S. murder spike in 6 decades. At least 21,500 people killed. Violent crime on the rise in 2020, following previous unprecedented spikes in murder. So we're talking about 2020 saw a massive increase, especially post George Floyd's death. 2021, an increase continuing into this year. Portland. Now, there are many individual cities that saw problems, and we'll touch on why that is the case. Increase in crime by nearly 30, homicides by nearly 30%. Crime is becoming one of the biggest America's biggest political issues. So clearly there is something going on here. I think we're all in agreement. I say agree or disagree, but is there anyone, just to raise it, just by show of hands, is there anyone who would disagree that things are getting pretty crazy? All right, good. I got more data if you need it. We can go on and on. So I said many examples, but a better question would be, what is the cause? What's the reason behind this? Is there an ideology? Is there a mindset? I think that we are living in times where you have people making claims like silence is violence. So if we are in disagreement about something, and I don't speak out against your personal political stance or agenda, that some people believe that they would be justified in lashing out physically against you for that. Or we also have a society that will often say all truth is relative, meaning what's true for me may not be true for you, or that there is no truth. Both of these statements being completely contradictory, because in order to make any kind of truth claim, even saying that there is no truth, you're ultimately making a truth claim. Or all truth is relative. You are making a truth claim. So these are these self-contradictory views, mindsets. And to bring it into a more of a practical perspective, and more something that fits more what we're dealing with, that the police should be defunded or even abolished. And I'm not to say, yeah, I was in law enforcement for a long time, and I'm not the pro-police cheerleader at every given moment. If anybody's even familiar with my YouTube channel, Code Red Conversations, which I'll be talking about a little bit later on, you will know that I have no problem speaking out against the police when they do something stupid. And we'll get into some of those more recent incidents to a degree throughout the course of this presentation. So I'm not saying that the police shouldn't be criticized and criticized severely. I think they should. And I thought that even while I was working as a cop. But to take money away from an area that is already lacking in finances, or to even worse, to say you're going to completely abolish that entity in a society that has gone nuts, there are consequences. And what are some of those consequences? Destroy lives. We saw the increase in violence, the homicide rate nationwide, and particularly in oftentimes in urban inner city communities, Hispanics, Black folks in particularly, who have seen the homicide rate impact those communities, especially the Black community, by over 5,000 more than previous years. An ever increasing crime rate, in particularly the massive uptick in violence. But a few questions also go with this. Is this increase, is this violence new? Have we ever experienced anything like this? Once again, what does the Bible have to say? I don't know if y'all can read that, so I'll read it for you. Ecclesiastes 1, 9, and 10 says, the thing that hath been, it is that which shall be. And that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof that it may be said, see, this is new? It has been already of old time, which was before. I think in Solomon made it come across as if there's really nothing new. Jeremiah 17:9 says, the heart of a man is deceitful and desperately wicked beyond measure. Who can know it? Then we also have that verse I referenced in the beginning from Genesis. And as we look through the text of scripture in the book of Judges, I just pointed out some that really resonate with me that I really think about. The book of Judges, if you're unfamiliar with that, you'll see absolute chaos going on. People just ultimately doing what they believe to be right in their own eyes. Throughout the Gospels, book of Romans, you'll see a pattern demonstrating that mankind is just sinful and that we have a bent towards rebelling from God. All these various crimes that I have listed up here, from murder, sexual assaults, batteries, they plagued us from the very beginning. And there are some who like to point out that there might be certain groups, certain individuals who may be more prone to violence than others. But I would disagree with that. I think mankind, all of mankind is in the same boat. And none of us are immune. And no one people group has cornered the market on evil or violence. And this is just a few examples throughout, a snippet of examples throughout history, throughout more recent history, I would even say, except for with the exception of the Aztec human sacrifices. Most of these are within the last 200 years or so. Rwandan genocide, transatlantic slave trade, killing fields in Cambodia, Nazi concentration camps. Various people groups don't look alike necessarily. All have there's something within our nature, and from a biblical perspective, sin that causes us to want to do harm to each other. Not saying that every individual is going to do all these things, but I would say the capability exists. And another thing that gives the impression, I believe, that it's new, because a lot of people have that perspective, have that opinion, is our 24-hour news cycles. You can, with the 24-hour news channels and social media, which puts us in contact with people who live on different sides of the world that we would normally never have contact with. And you couple the sinful heart of man with technological advances equals a greater ability to do harm to them. So what can we do about this? Well, not a whole lot. So on that sad note, I'm going to end. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Now, we may not be able to completely protect ourselves from every situation. And if I was to say, stand up here and tell y'all that, I'd be lying, and you should just like not listen to anything that's happening. Because even the best can be taken by surprise. But there are things that we can do to make ourselves into a hard target. Now, what is a hard target, you may ask? Some people may not be familiar with that term. I just want you to know I'm not talking about this hard target. For some of you youngsters, you may not know what this is. I'm sure some of you older cats, that's Jean-Claude Van Damme in the movie. It was like 1994 movie, Hard Target. I mean, all you got to do is look at the mullet and you kind of get an idea of what's time. Good movie that I enjoyed. Then again, you're talking a long time ago, so I don't know if there's how bad he cussing and all that kind of stuff. But let's define our terms as we proceed. Soft target, hard target. And these are things that we've been hearing more and more, especially in light of the Buffalo mass shooting and the Uvalde, Texas shooting. We've been hearing terms like that during the whole gun debate. A soft target, a person or thing, and these are pretty much oftentimes military terms, so you hear a phrase in that kind of terminology. A person, thing, or location that is easily accessible to the general public and relatively unprotected. Keep that in your mind. Making it vulnerable to military or terroristic attack. Now, and we're going to bring these terms down to individuals and down to how it impacts us and how we can be either a soft target or hard target. Is a person who, due to their actions and/or appropriate protective measures, is able to minimize existing risks and thus most likely represents an unattractive target. Got that from Travel Security Handbook. I love that definition. I love it so much that I want to read it again. I'm going to read it with a little bit more enthusiasm. Kind of sound like a Jason Bourne-esque type thing or James Bond. Hard target is a person who, due to their actions and/or appropriate protective measures, is able to minimize existing risks and thus most likely represents an unattractive target. I think that deserves applause. That's how good that was. But in all seriousness, this is our ultimate goal. This is your ultimate goal. If you're here and you haven't been dragged here, this should be your ultimate goal. And I'm hoping that if you haven't already thought about these issues, and I know there's some brothers and sisters here who have, because we've had conversations, I'm hoping that this presentation, if you hadn't thought of it previously, will kind of serve as a catalyst to get you to start thinking down that path. And one step in that process, again, is to understand the criminal mind, how they think. I want to give you guys a little bit of a brief history about me. I broke down my law enforcement background, and I'm going to keep this brief here. But I wouldn't say I was always like the most hard-charging of officers throughout my career. When I worked in the jail, after coming from working in maximum security prison, when you literally have places where inmate housing units that are known as gladiator dorms, that's where I worked. And you would see an inmate get dragged out of there probably multiple times a week because they were sexually assaulted. When it was known that there were officers who were vice lords, gangster disciples, gang members, officers who were overseeing inmates, when you know that this is going on, when you have officers who are being manipulated into bringing in drugs, when you see multiple officers getting terminated for bringing in drugs, being found out that they're gang members, getting involved in sexual activity and violent activity with other inmates, and you have people trying to intimidate you on their first day on the job. When you leave that job and you come here in Vegas and you work the county jail, which is funded probably like 4 or 5 times better than the state. And you had higher trained and better paid staff. I was like, you're gonna pay me like twice the money to do this job when it's like easily not even close to as dangerous? I think I kind of had a tendency to let my guard down over those years. And I'm not saying I was a lay down, but I wasn't always the most security minded. I'm just being open and honest with you. And it wasn't until in about 2004, I had a buddy of mine attended a conference put on by Caliber Press. I don't know if Eric gets familiar with those guys. It was called, I'm drawing a blank, my bad, forgive me for that. But it's Street Survival by Caliber Press, 2 or 3 day seminar. And I'm telling you, where they basically remind you as an officer how complacency can kill. And usually officers who end up dying have about 10 years on, whether it's in the jail, whether it's on the streets. They usually have about 10 years on the job, and that's where complacency can set in. But over the course of those 2 days, you were shown videos of officers being attacked, stabbed, shot, murdered on video. No question about it. It was a wake-up call. And from that point on, throughout the rest of my career, it flipped a switch in my mind that I'm ever so thankful for. And I still carried on to this very day. And I retired in 2014. I'm still mindful of my tactics. I'm still mindful of my situational awareness skills. I'm mindful of my physical fitness, various other topics. I still study and read about violence and things that I can, and ways that I can improve and I can help protect my family. So I say all that to say is that there's always a time to make changes, to begin making changes. If you haven't thought about these things in the past, don't beat yourself up about it. You're here today. We're gonna move on, we're gonna learn. Cool? Cool? Thank you. All right, understand the criminal mind. So let's jump in.
In all, how many muggings have you done?
I've done over 100.
Shocked by that number, a whopping 39% of the muggers in our survey said they had done more than 20 robberies. They also told us they're equal opportunity when it comes to victims. 55% said the sex of the target didn't matter. 46% told us age didn't make a difference either.
Your favorite target?
Anyone alone. Anyone who was alone. Well, it didn't matter whether it was a man or woman. It's just basically whether they were alone.
What makes you catch a lover's eye in the first place? 45% told us that nice clothes or jewelry got their attention first. That's because, as we discovered, flash means catch.
Flashy was a popular answer when we asked mothers to describe the ideal person to rob. They're clearly looking at your clothes, valuables, even your shoes.
They wore like shaggy clothes and like gym clothes or a gym bag.
Also attractive people who look like they won't fight back. 31% checked that box. 23% said they wanted people who looked lost or drunk. Bottom line is, one mother wrote, someone you think you can overpower.
When I was way mad, you watch people walk by, see, they were alone. People call it lurking, surveillance, or stalking you. That's basically what the word is, stalking.
And watch for
Witnesses.
A mother thought Elise Rosales was a vulnerable target when she came home one night to her apartment in Harlem.
I heard the buzzer go off, and someone in my apartment building actually let them into the building.
He followed her for a moment, then attacked.
The entire time, I just remember honestly, I was screaming help.
Elise wasn't hurt and only lost her phone. It's an attack that proves what mothers told us about where they strike in the city. While on the street was number one, inside, outside a building was a close number two. 27% like the subways.
I was in the subway, again, I would be on the platforms, closer to the subways, the tunnels. So like that would be my getaway inside the tunnel.
But don't let your guard down when you escape the city. Nearly half of our mothers told us they get in the suburbs too.
where are people most vulnerable in the suburbs?
In the suburbs, are the driveway. The driveway between the houses. The trip from the car to the house is the most vulnerable.
And if you're not careful, all you may hear is a voice.
I don't want to hurt you, but I have to. I'm going to hurt you. Give me your wallet, give me your money, and please be able to comply.
Now, this guy is a career offender. We're going to watch another video from him. And it goes into a little bit more detail and actually has another woman who was victimized. And just to kind of help you guys better understand. And the next video will go at the very end, will go into a little more detail as to the motivations of the offender. Pay attention. I hope you keep in mind, guys, some of the things that you heard, what they were looking for, because I will be asking questions. No official test. Don't worry about that. We'll ask you guys to cooperate and participate and see if we're starting to understand, if we're paying attention and understanding what these guys are looking for, how they choose their targets.
Inside the mind of a failure, who were the targets? Can you fight back?
News 4 Scott McFarland and the News 4 I-Team with what you need to know to stay alive directly from the mouths of those.
You're going to hear some of the same information, but let's let it settle in.
In a busy city, it's easy to blend in.
I always talk to everyone.
Heidi Katie's wise.
I'm paying attention. I'm not afraid.
But there was one boy, this disability advocate says she didn't have her guard up. She headed to a meeting in D.C.
We were waiting for the elevator, and he suddenly just reached out and snatched.
Man decided to make her own.
And I started screaming, no, no. And I was trying to hit him.
In seconds, he was gone. Her fanny pack, wallet, and driver's license.
I was very surprised.
My favorite target was anyone alone. Anyone who was alone. Well, it didn't matter whether it was a man or woman.
David Solano is a serial mother who did 25 to life prison sentence. One of the inmates who responded to an I-Team survey said that the victim robberies by his partners in the world.
I've done over 100.
According to the survey, for many mothers, it's not a one-time deal. 39% say they committed more than 20 robberies. When it comes to the target, more than half of those who responded said gender didn't matter. 46% didn't care about it. But what did they look for? Anyone flash. 45% said nice clothes or jewelry. First caught their attention.
If they wore like shaggy clothes and like gym clothes or a gym bag, I wouldn't bother.
About a third said they looked for those who might not fight back. 1 out of 4 said they targeted anyone who looked lost or drunk. While most of the mothers in the survey said they attacked mainly on the streets or inside or outside the building, 27% for the subways.
When I was in the subway, again, I would be on the platforms, closer to the subways, the tunnels, so that would be my getaway, inside the tunnels.
That's why Solano said it's safe to stand in the middle of the fire. We're all surrounded by surveillance cameras in the city. The muggers surveyed by the IT that just gives people a false sense of security. Nearly 3/4 of the muggers they said they don't want to be caught on camera. They just hide their faces. And some sobering stats to keep in mind as ever a victim. Large number of the muggers in the survey, 70%, said they carried a weapon. Sometimes, with 69% saying they would get physical if they don't fought back.
I wouldn't suggest it at all. If a person's really, out to get the money, they're liable to win. I've had men try to fight back, and I would hurt, yes.
They said, don't fight back. It's only your wallet.
That's the advice I receive. It's self-defense class at the D block.
I think it's just be aware of what's around you.
Now, always noticing those next to you, calling out their instincts. A city where you never know who's around the corner. Scott McFarland, who's July.
So what motivated muggers to attack? More than half of those who responded said they did it to support a habit. Others said they did it for the adrenaline rush. To read even more on this survey, visit our NBC Washington.
Okay, so you saw the video, saw it a couple of times. The class participation, I want y'all to tell me some of the things that you heard. What are some of the things that we learned from these videos? If anyone's just yell out something.
They look for people who are have flashy clothes.
Flashy clothes. They targeted people who are by themselves. Very good. Anything else? Could care less whether it's male or female.
Sex of the victim didn't matter.
Sex irrelevant. Anything else? Distracted. And what are most people doing these days?
On the phone.
Yeah, we're going to get into it. Very good, y'all. I appreciate that. Equal opportunity attacker. Age or sex, didn't matter whatsoever. Preferring targets who are alone. Fancy, flashy clothing. Look for people they think won't put up a fight. They search for weaknesses. That was something he said in the beginning, in the first video. He said he'd be laying back in the alleyway, watching people as they walk by. And she was like, what are you looking for? Weaknesses. So lessons. So now that we understand that, we have a basic understanding of what they're looking for, what makes you or I a potential target. Let's go into a little more detail. First thing that I thought of while I was putting all this information together, don't think it will never happen to you. A lot of people think it's going to happen to someone else. Oh, crime happens. Oh, there's only 5 out of 100,000 people, and who might become victims of a particular crime. And generally speaking, most of us don't walk around assuming that we're going to become victims of a crime. But that is just the mindset that will have you walking around, handing your phone, guard down, totally unprepared, and being the victim, distracted while you're walking down the street. Try not to be alone, if at all possible. Now, every situation, you can't, once again, going back to what I said at the beginning, no one can completely harden themselves or make themselves in a position where there's no harm can ever come to them. None of us can do that. There's always, at one point or another, your guard will be down. You might have somebody will call you. You'll look at your phone. You can't always protect yourself, not all the time. But we can increase we can increase our ability to do so. So if you're out, if you know you're going to hang out and it's later on in the evening, and you might be coming home late at night, be mindful of that. Plan out your day. Think about, okay, where am I going? Am I going in an area that might be a little more high crime, have a higher crime rate, a little more dangerous? Am I going to be leaving work maybe at a later date? Is there something I can do? Can I wait for someone else to get off work? Can I ask if I can get a security escort or something along those lines? Little things like that can make a difference, can make a massive difference. Don't invite unwanted attention by wearing fancy clothing or jewelry. And once again, you may go out and could be going to a wedding or fancy party or something along those lines and you want to look nice. But if you take all these things into consideration in that process and you put on your best, put on the nice necklace or watch, if you think about step number one, or lesson number one, being mindful that you could be victimized. Two, do the best you can to be have somebody along with you. And maybe just don't wear everything you have, the most expensive things. Find something that looks expensive, maybe. It looks expensive, so they get it. They don't have any, they're really not getting your values. Walk with confidence. Walk with confidence. Don't give off the appearance of being confused, lost, or weak. And who here, any veterans in here? Show of hands, at least 3. What is something that you learned early on in your military training? Like while you're in basic training, something that they taught.
Command presence.
Command presence, y'all. Goes a long way. Because the military oftentimes speaks about leadership, so you want to give off an air of leadership. And going back to my prison, so leaving the Army and then working in the prison, the air, what you give off as you walk, and you know you're walking through a housing unit with 80 to 100 inmates. Many of them don't like you simply because of the uniform that you're wearing. Many of them are in there for violent crime. I learned, I'm thankful that the Army taught me command presence, but it was notched up on a whole different level working in that prison system. You walk with a different air of confidence, completely. And it's something that could be learned. Anybody in here can learn. So, if y'all don't mind, stand up. Okay, do me a favor. If you were feeling in particularly weak and confused and sad, how would you stand? How would you stand? In particularly weak, tired, confused. Okay, what are some things that we notice? What are you doing with your body?
Slumped shoulders.
Speak up.
Slumped over.
Slumped over. Where might you be looking?
Yeah.
Down in the ground. So your head's facing downward. You're not looking particularly strong. Now let's just say you just fought off 10 people with your bare hands. How would you be feeling at that moment?
Tired.
Not after you got done being tired. How would you be feeling about yourself when you thought back on that? You'd be feeling pretty dang good.
Pumped up.
You know, the police came to asking you questions. So think about being confident. If you're confident in yourself, how are you standing? Stand that way right now. Stand with confidence. Okay, break it down. What's going on with your body? Tell me. Speak up, y'all. Standing tall. Head.
Straight up.
Where are you looking? Are you looking at the ground? There you go. Are you feeling good? You set shoulders back, head up, chest out a bit, because you're feeling confident. Mm-hmm. When I used to walk through that facility, when I used to walk through that prison, it was count time. Man, I walked like I was the baddest dude on the block. I don't know. But I walked like I was the baddest dude. I'd be counting those inmates. I'm like, and they knew it. They knew it because I gave off that air of confidence. And I knew there were some that would walk around all these dudes back in the 90s, all they had was protein powder, eat, and hit those weights. And you had super criminals, literally, dudes jacked up. And they'd walk around sometimes trying to be all big. Hey, Officer Muldrow, let me get one of them inmate request form. Mm-hmm. And it was like, they're trying to intimidate because they wanted to see how I would respond. And if I responded in a timid, shy way, it was just an open door for them to try to manipulate. But I'd be like, here you go. And then they'd be trying to stand there. I'm like, need something else? No, I'm good, man. I'm good. And they walk off because I didn't take the bait. And I gave off the air of confidence. When you're walking wherever, and one of these guys, like the dude we just saw a video of, y'all can sit down, thank you. One of these guys that are those predators, and they're out there, they're watching you, all this matters. Think about that. So as we move on, letter C. Figure out where you need to go before leaving your room or your home. Because you'll see some people out there, they'll be like looking at their phone if they're walking, or they're trying to figure out if they're sightseeing, looking confused. Okay, when you're in the house, when you're in your room, okay, I need to go down this street, turn left at this road here. All right, it's on the right-hand side, about 2 buildings down. Okay. Get all your information, then you take off walking. And you don't want to stand out, because if you're in Chicago, or New York, or LA, some of these busy towns, they see a tourist, they smell a tourist a mile away. And tourists are usually ones who've got all their gear and their fanny pack and bag and all this, and you stand out. When I used to work downtown, Las Vegas Boulevard, you would see people walking. I would tell people, don't go past, I think it was like 6th Street downtown. If you're heading eastbound on Fremont and you go past, I think it's 6, right on top of my head. I said, if you go past there and you're dressed all nice and you're looking neat and clean, you don't know where you're going. Like I could stop, I would tell that individual, you're not from around here, right? They'd be like, oh no, I just want to go sightseeing. I'm like, you don't want to go sightseeing that direction. Just turn around and go the other way. But and I was able to see that. And I didn't even think like I didn't even have that mindset. I can only imagine those people who are looking to prey on these individuals. I can only imagine what they've done. So consider these things, they go a mighty long way. And don't shy away from making eye contact with people. And that also goes alongside walking with your head down. Head up. You see somebody? Sam, stand up. You know how the brothers do it, right? Walking down the street, what do we do? That's just what we do. Nothing wrong with that. We don't do this. Stand up. What does this give? What impressions does this give us? What am I giving off? Aggression. That's why I say within limits. Because you could be looking like you're ready to challenge somebody. Mm-hmm. And on the street, that could be like being disrespectful. So you don't want to do that. You look up, you acknowledge them. Hey, what's up, man? Go on about your business. Nothing wrong with making eye contact. Hey, how you doing? How you doing, sir? I do that wherever I go. If I go somewhere and my radar starts to kick in and tell me that it might be a problem, it could be. Usually it isn't, but it could be a problem. If I'm walking into a store, I'm on the west side of North Town, I do that when I walk. I put all those things, I turn it back up. Like I remember I'm still on patrol. Turn those dials back up, and I walk in with confidence. And being a bigger guy doesn't hurt either. And I'll get into that a little bit later as well. All right, number 5, pay attention to your surroundings. Keep your head out of your phone. I don't have to go into much detail on these. These are common sense, but common sense isn't always as common as it should be. And we can develop habits. We can develop bad habits. It's just a reality. Watch and listen for unusual noises, people acting strangely, under the influence, following you, disruptive, people mentally ill. You're walking down the street, you see someone who's just acting as if maybe they're talking to someone who isn't there. That could be they're under the influence of a drug or alcohol, or they could be mentally ill. You're walking down the street and you hear footsteps behind you. Now, if you're in a crowded area, you're on the strip and it's a Saturday afternoon, there are a lot of people, it is what it is. But if you're in an area, if you're by yourself or it's not a highly populated area and you're walking down the street and you're hearing footsteps getting closer to you, turn around, acknowledge it. There's something to be said about letting people know that you see them, and which goes back to making eye contact, letting them know that you see them. That could be a deterrent in and of itself. Now we're getting into my personal suggestions, things that I just thought of based on my years of training and experience. Continue developing your situational awareness skills. Follow the amazing YouTube channel, Code. Oh, that's mine. I get you. And another one is active self-protection. That's another excellent. Write these down or take a picture of this just so y'all can remember. But active self-protection is a great channel where they talk about where they give you information on self-protection. And read books. I'm constantly reading books on situational awareness, personal tactics, individual tactics from people with military experience, some people who were just, like the guy from Active Self-Protection, I don't even think he has any kind of a deep background in that. I think he might have been like Navy and had nothing to do. He wasn't like a police officer or corrections officer or some special forces guy. He was just a guy that took up the time and he studied this topic and he gained some skills and he became very proficient in that area. Read books. Now, some of these books got some pretty rough language, so just a little warning there. But The Gift of Fear by Gabby DeBecker, very good book about intuition. When Violence is the Answer, and Violence of Mind. And the author of Violence of Mind is Varg Freeborn. So if you want to buy a book from a dude that sounds like a pretty bad dude, buy Violence of Mind by Varg Freeborn. But it's an excellent book, excellent. But he has a pretty foul mouth, just a little more. Trust your intuition. Sometimes, I would say that throughout the course of our lives, we've all developed to varying degrees some level of the ability to study individuals. Like we understand body language. Just from the little bit of information that we had when I had y'all stand up and ask you to describe how someone looks when they're sad or down, we've all developed that skill in varying degrees. So trust your intuition. If a situation doesn't feel right, if you're walking down the street and you see a group of people and you don't feel good about it, my mindset is your best bet would be to turn around and go the opposite direction, across the street even. And even if they were totally harmless, I'd rather ask for forgiveness than put myself in a situation and then have regret later on down. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you're walking down, I gave you that example. You're walking down the street, you feel uncomfortable, what are you gonna do? I mean, we live in the culture, you have to be really careful in the culture. The cultural mindset today is that, let me just call it for what it is. White folks, if you make any decision, oftentimes the impression is that, well, it might be white supremacy. I'm just calling it as it is. That's just the mindset. So a lot of people they feel guilty if they feel as if this situation may not be the best situation for them. Let me tell y'all, if y'all don't know me, I ain't all about all that white guilt. I think it's ridiculous. I don't think you need to be worried and feel about the things that happened, what your ancestors did. If you're not a racist, you're good. You're good with me. You don't have to worry about what your ancestors did 50, 100 years ago. But that's just me. And if you have any racist tendencies in you, there are particular groups of people that you don't feel comfortable around. Now, I don't know what there may be in your history. Maybe you had a bad incident. I can't speak on that. But if you just feel this way just because you do and you have racist tendencies, that's something that you need to check. And if you're a Christian, a professing Christian, you need to bring that before the Lord and seek repentance. But generally speaking, I'm talking about generally speaking, as you go about your day, you can feel uncomfortable. If you see a group of young men hanging out loud, I don't care what color, white, black, brown, and they're loud and they're acting goofy or acting weird, not goofy, but you feel uncomfortable, If I'm walking down the street, I'm not necessarily going to walk in that direction. And I feel like I can handle myself pretty well. I may cross the street or I may turn around. So what I'm saying is trust your instincts at its core. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
I try not to get political. Sorry. Didn't help it. And once again, further develop a biblical understanding of the nature of man. There are a lot of people, and we've heard over recent years of people who went over to, I think it's some of the crappiest places in the world. They went over to meet the Taliban or Al Qaeda because they just wanted to love on them. And then they come back with their head missing. If you have a world, if you don't understand the nature of man, understanding the inherent sin that exists within all of us, and you come from a secular mindset where you believe that we evolved from higher classes of bacteria and that our ancestors are fish, you will think as time goes on, we will only get better. Where scripture gives a completely different breakdown of man. That things have only gotten appear to only have gotten progressively worse over the years. And we are born in sin, and we will continue until we've been born again, or we're in the new heavens and new earth. We're present with the Lord. So have a good understanding so you're not being foolish while you're out. All right, we're going to get into some areas. I'm going to make some people feel uncomfortable. Now, all these topics I discussed are within your own physical limits. I know people have medical issues, various other things that will limit them. So make sure you check with your doctor. I'm not giving out fitness advice or anything like that without you taking the steps to protect yourself and keep yourself healthy, right? Ain't trying to get sued. But work on your physical fitness. Work on your physical fitness. I'm not saying you got to join a CrossFit gym, do all that kind of stuff, but I think that most of us can. There are a lot that most of us can do to help us. And why is that important? Once again, check with your doctor. Work within your limits. Realize that life is extremely unpredictable. As I mentioned earlier, you may have to run for your life, pick up something or someone heavy, drag someone, climb up or over something in order to save yourself or someone else. The people, there was the October 1 shooting. Good example. The October 1 shooting at the, what was it called again? The country music
Route 66, something like that?
Route 91.
Was it Route 51 or something?
60.
Like 91. We had some friends that were there, and we knew them from one of our CrossFit gyms that we were a member of. And they said they were in the middle of it, took off running. One of them, well, they all were pretty serious about it. They were there at least 4 days a week at CrossFit. They were really fit. One of them was like really good. It was Shannon. She's 5'3", maybe $125, but she was literally able to help people over a wall who were trying to get away from the gunfire. And the fact that she could lift some serious weight because she trained herself up, she was able to help people. Now, did she save lives in particular? I don't know. And then they all took off and they ran to, was it the Thomas and Mack, where they were all getting together, like as a staging area? They ran that whole distance. I mean, they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know if there was some like major terrorist attack or whatever, but they huffed it miles to get where they needed to be. And I'm telling y'all, you can watch any video you can pull up any video on Instagram or YouTube and you see, and I'll get on us the most, fat, out of shape cops who get in the mix and they can't really do anything because they're not prepared. Other than having medical issues, other than there being something that you outside of your control, why would any of us put ourselves in a situation to where we're going to be helpless when something like this goes down? And we all have people that we love and care about. We all have people we love and care about. So if you haven't taken your health and fitness seriously within your physical limitations, and there's really nothing stopping you, ask yourself why. Is it just because I don't want to? Or what else is it? Just do a deeper search and just challenge yourself as to why am I taking this so lightly? Improve your self-defense skills. Martial arts, fighting arts, combatives. Throughout the course of my life, I've been bullied as a kid, in school, picked on. Growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood in the 70s and 80s, it was pretty ugly at times. I mean, hearing the N-word was a very routine part of my life. And there were days where I had kids literally threaten to beat me up. And I was always kind of a bigger kid. I was never small, but I didn't know how to fight. I was always scared. Always scared. I'll be the first to admit it. Even as an adult, when I was in different situations, heart rate would always elevate. And after I had learned how to defend myself. But over the course of my lifetime, I remember after watching Lethal Weapon, the first one, which is the best one. After watching Lethal Weapon, I went to my dad. I said, Dad, can I start taking karate? He was like, yeah, sure. So I advanced up ranks really fast because I was like obsessed with it. I think I achieved my brown belt in like 2 years. And like the next level was black belt. And the only reason I didn't test for my black belt because I felt like I wasn't doing it wrong. And I felt like I didn't want to disrespect the art by not testing. But I flew up the ranks. I went from, I got to the point where I was able to, at 17, 18 years old, I was beating up black belts in my class, second-degree black belts in my class, competing in karate tournaments. And then throughout the course of my life, I started boxing while I was working in prison. I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when I came out here. Muay Thai, Jeet Kune Do concepts was Bruce Lee's art, so to speak. Krav Maga, Judo, all because, well, one, I just wanted to be able to know I have the skills to be able to protect myself. And I don't say this to brag. It was just, I understood that my line of work put me in a situation where conflict was just a natural part of it. And if anybody came to check me or challenge me, you know, and the cool thing about it is when we talk about body language and all that kind of stuff, when you know what you're capable of, the coolest UFC fighters that you know ain't the ones talking all this mess. They're the ones who are real humble and chill. Why? Because they know what they can do. When you see your most elite special operators out there, they're not out there barking, telling the world how bad they are, but they know if things go bad, if the crap hits the fan, they know what they can do. And it adds an air of confidence. I would have some guys, I'll be walking to the gym. One of my buddies, he and I would always talk about training. He'd be like, man, Eric, I know you must be training, man, because you just walk like you could wreck somebody. And I didn't even think like that. But he was able to see it. He was able to notice that. You gain confidence when you know that you are fit, when you know that you are strong, and you know that if things get ugly physically, you can defend yourself. And I want to bring this on the men in particular. Now, I'm a huge advocate for women being able to defend themselves, women going to the gym and working on something other than booty, legs, and abs, working that upper body, because you never know you have to push someone away or pull something. I'm going to be stepping on toes, y'all, so I don't mean to be offensive, but we're talking about life and death issues, okay? We're talking about life and death issues. So I'm having fun, but remember, when it's all said and done, these are very serious issues. But bringing it back to the men. One second. Kids, got parents who are older that we may need to start taking care of. Your girlfriend, wife. I'm a firm believer that there are certain roles that we have within the context of a family. And I believe that men are the protectors. I thoroughly believe that. So guys, if we're not taking this area seriously, what are we doing? What are we doing? Now, the last one here, consider, this is, again, depending on your conscience, you have to deal with that. This is something you may have to wrestle. And I'm not telling anybody what they should do, in particularly in this area. But I would say consider carrying a weapon, a firearm. Understand that your physical abilities can only take you so far. You can't kick a bullet out of there. You can't outrun a bullet. So you may find yourself in a situation where deadly force may be your only option. And what are you going to do? Again, within your conscience. But consider these things. Consider these things. Now, I saw the videos that I showed. I just put those up there because they look cool. I put them up there as a reminder of the reality of the world that we live in. Robbery, which by definition entails violence involved in it. Home invasion, someone kicks in your door. Knife attack, mass shooting. I mean, but I'm sure the people in Buffalo, New York, a few months ago, when they went to the store, they didn't think that that was going to happen. The people at the October 1 shooting go to a country music concert, didn't think that was going to be the case. And then if you look at when I'm talking about the issue of family and protecting those around you, your loved ones. A lot of people say, oh, I'll just call the police. Well, at best, the police are minutes away. Am I right, Eric?
40 minutes.
Yeah, at best. Like I said, you might be lucky and there's somebody
7 to 10 and it's all over.
Right. At best, minutes away. And look at the Uvalde incident, Uvalde, Texas. Those cops, considering all the details that we know so far, what we know so far, those cops failed those kids. Failed those kids. Me personally, I'm gonna do the best I can to be the first responder for my family. That's what I'm gonna try to do. Now I know it's different when you talk about schools, but I'm just using that as an example. When you ultimately put your safety in the hands of someone else, then whatever happens is pretty much like, it is what it is. You just have to deal with those consequences. Again, this is just an introduction. Do not rely on other people to protect you. If you're an adult, healthy adult, do not rely on other people to protect you. Again, if you want to follow me, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Code Red Conversations, my website, my YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram on the Code Red Conversations. I hope that I made y'all think a little bit about these issues. Once again, I know I stepped on some toes. I may have made y'all feel a little uncomfortable, but it's only because I care. I love y'all, especially all those that I know from the stream. I truly love y'all. I only want the best for you. And so go about the rest of your day, but consider these things. I'll be sticking around for a few minutes. If anybody has any questions about any of the topics, anything we discussed here or anything else, I'm here for a Q&A. But don't feel obligated to stay if you feel like you have to go for work or just ready to go chill out. God bless you, do your thing. I won't be offended. But for anyone else who want to stick around, I'm going to pull up a chair. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It'd be good to address changing your patterns.
Speak up.
It'd be good to address changing your patterns.
Yeah, you know what's funny, man? I had some additional notes, but I was trying to be mindful of the time. But that was one thing that I wrote down, was that don't be routine when you go about your day. I wrote down, do you shop at the same store? Are you coming and going to work and coming home around the same time every day. You take the same route to and from work every day. You could be developing habits and showing people that you're very predictable. Now, it doesn't mean that every time you go to work and come home or go, you have to constantly go to a different store. Doesn't mean that, but just change up your routine every now and then. Go to work a little earlier. If possible, come home a little earlier if you're in that position. You may not be. But vary things up a little bit, because there might be some people, could be someone living down the street from you who is targeting you. They want to get into your home. They want to get into your house, whatever it may be, your apartment. So consider those things. Did you want to add anything to that?
It's getting real sophisticated now in Canada. They're taking those tabs that go on phones where you can track things, and they're looking at this car they want to steal, put it on there, and they'll just wait. And then when that thing comes out, they take it down, and they take it down as a carjacking. So
yeah, you got to be very careful. Do the best things you can do. Just change up your route a bit. Don't make it so easy for the criminals to be able to follow you and hunt you down and know what you're doing. Can you speak up a little bit? Right. Yeah, I mean, avoidance, we can go so many different places on avoidance. Here's a good example, and this may not be exactly what you're talking about, but I'll get into what you're talking about. You see a lot of protests going on in recent years. You'll see a person driving down the street and they'll drive right up to the incident, like right up to it. And then people jumping in front of them and trying to stop the car. And then when you decide to take off driving, they'll show half the video footage where it looks like you just ran through the crowd. Pay attention, situational awareness, seeing what's going on ahead of you. You know what? That doesn't look good up there. I don't know what's happening, but it don't look right. Let me turn around. Always look ahead, as far up as you can. You don't need to just look a few feet in front of you when you're driving. Always being mindful. And also, when you're talking about avoidance, it's just, if you want to go, like, can you specify? I really want to answer your question. Can you go into a little more detail what you mean by that? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, 100%, 100%. And it's kind of like what I referenced earlier. You're walking down the street and you see someone, something, a situation that just doesn't sit well with you, just doesn't feel right. Going back in, getting in your car, going home. Yeah, like I said, you don't have to be there at that moment. Like, we live near a Walmart that's talking about Boulder Highway and Flamingo. That's the closest Walmart to us. That's not the best of neighborhoods, but we go there. And if the ladies go there on their own, I'm constantly reminding them. Somebody does something silly, doesn't mean you gotta tell them off. Sometimes you just gotta cooler heads prevail. You just gotta keep going. You don't have to if you feel disrespected. Man, disrespect has caused so many deaths and so many unnecessary fights, especially for us men, because we feel like we ain't trying to get punked out. And we want to walk around with our chest bowed out. I mean, you want to have a little bit because you want the conscience. I don't want to contradict myself here, but you don't want to walk around thinking that, the seas better part as you're walking through. Someone bumps into you, it could just be an accident. I've seen people bump into someone. What's up, man? What's up, homie? And next thing they're in a fight. And then somebody gets stabbed. And what was at the root of it? The dude bumped into him or he stepped on his foot. I've seen people go to prison. I've seen people beating somebody up. They punch somebody, they fall down, they hit their head, they're dead over a slight disrespect. So all in all, pay attention to where you're going. If you see something that doesn't look right, avoid it. You know what? I meant to go to Costco, but there was too much stupidity going on. Something didn't look right. I just came home. And I've literally known people who turned around in situations that ended up being horrendous, where someone ended up getting shot or stabbed or It's something along those lines. Simply because they listen to that voice in the back. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
On that topic, like see something, say something. You just call the police. You had an issue like last week, we're driving out of your bus stop, and there's been a time and then and I was living, like I was at my husband's I wanted to say something like, hey, I see you. That's not your job.
Yeah, I would say, you know what, it's difficult. But what I would say in general, your best bet would be calling. Because going back to what your husband said, you don't know what the capabilities of that individual are, or what they're capable of. You, like I said, you could be putting yourself in a situation where now you're being victimized. I mean, I don't know if you were planning on getting out of your car or anything like that. No, if you're,
I see you like
you know what? For some people, that could accomplish a lot. Someone's paying attention to them, and they could stop. It's possible that you yelling, and I honestly don't think that was a bad idea, personally, because there's some people I understand that people are paying attention. They're watching what I'm doing now. I'm gonna chill a little bit, still pick up the phone, call the police, have the police come around, and then if you see once the police arrive, and maybe even stay in contact with the 911 operator, tell the officer that I'm going to be at this location here, because you may not want your face to be seen by the suspect. Tell them I'm going to be at the 7-Eleven at this intersection if they want to see, if they need a witness. Because if, typically, in a lot of situations, and a domestic may not be the case. I'm not sure what the current laws, if they've changed any, but if a misdemeanor or something like that doesn't happen in the presence of an officer. Usually, with the exception of like a misdemeanor or DUI, with the exception of those, it's usually a citation. But if you say you witnessed this, it could be the difference between that individual going to jail or not. So you still want to be acting as a good witness. You can't lose, y'all. You can't lose acting as a good witness. Did I answer that? Say again.
When somebody gets to the point of being punching someone in public and being out of control, they've lost it.
Yeah.
And you really escalate them even further by getting involved.
That's very true.
So you really got to be careful.
It's a juggling act.
I told my kids when they've grown up, have a sixth sense, but be aware of your surroundings and just always be aware of everything going on around you. And really watch your peripheral. If you see something moving fast, if you see somebody out of control, it's better to back off and let the police take care of it, because you don't know that they're not going to pull out a weapon.
Right, you don't know. And then, but see, this is why I say it's a balancing, it's a juggling act, and it's really tough, because let's say that you do pick up the phone and call 911, which is a good thing, which is a smart thing to do, and they are losing it. But you choose not to get involved. And I'm not saying which answer is necessarily right or wrong as far as responding. I'm just trying to get us to think about how things can go. And then let's say the police don't arrive for 2 minutes and that person beats that person literally to death. Then you'd have to say, man, then you might be wrestling with, should I have gotten involved? I'm just saying how difficult some of these decisions are. And I'm not telling you which is the best decision for you to make. It all depends on your skills, your training, your knowledge, everything that's going on. There's so many factors. When people ask me questions when it comes to a law enforcement response, why did the cops do this, or should an officer have done this, or what do you think? I often say it depends, because it's not black and white. Self-defense is not black and white. I mean, there's some things that are extreme and it's pretty much black and white, but generally speaking, self-defense isn't necessarily black and white, because there could be some extreme consequences on either side. You just have to go with what you think is best and make wise, knowledgeable, well-studied decisions. so that when you're in, or if you're in that situation, you respond appropriately and you're ready for the potential consequences.
Oh, and you're gonna say something, but when you've got little ones in the backseat, you know, when
That would
you're
be
putting
negative.
everybody in jail.
Which goes along with, you know, depends.
Yeah.
Like what's the totality of the
You gotta really
circumstances?
watch it.
Right.
What's who you're involving in what's.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that goes back to what I was saying. It depends on what your situation is. Now, how I might respond to something, if I'm at a mall and I'm by myself, and then something goes down, as opposed to if I got the family with me, it could be completely different response. Good questions, though. Anyone else?
Plus, when you're in the car, we call it the tomb in patrol, because you're there and you're confined. This guy could have a gun, who knows what, start shooting into the car. So you don't really want to do a lot when you're in the car. You wouldn't drive by and yell him out the window, because that's not going to be good. So, you know, I don't know about
If
yelling.
she's still moving and they're not like getting out or something like that, you know, I've seen people change just because someone said something.
Yeah.
I'm
As
just
long as you
saying,
don't close
it's
that
happening.
gap. As long as you're far enough away, like on the other side of the street or something. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't get too close like that.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a depends. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate y'all being here.